Hey everybody, Steven here, Gear Stuff and Things, Modern Witchcraft Band, and today I wanted to take a minute to talk about my Quad Cortex preset and how I use it in the context of live shows and recording, so on and so forth. I haven't made any content featuring the Quad Cortex since I switched to it, so I thought it would be nice to do that and kind of bring it back to some of the older format videos I used to do with the Helix, walking through those patches. But in this instance, just to kind of get back into the game, I'm going to walk you through my personal presets, which are available on the Cortex cloud under GST Audio. You can go find them and download them and mess with them yourself if you're someone who has a Quad Cortex. And yeah, just let's get into it. For the examples today, you're going to be hearing this ESP LTD Viper 400. It's got the Will Adler Fishmans in it, and it's a great sounding guitar. It's my main jam in the band now. So also, I guess I should mention Friday the 2nd of February, my band Modern Witchcraft, featuring the internet's own Nick Hill Makes Music, put out a record, as well as our finer? It's a finer one of our finer singles. Our final single, Sugar for Rats, which features Morgan Lander from the band Kitty. And yeah, it's great. It came out pretty well. It's been a long time coming, 2 years of work, and it's out there now. So a lot of the tones you hear on that record are Helix and Neural DSP plugins mixed with a handful of real amps and in the room type of thing, just to add some of that natural vibe on top of all of the other crazy effects and reverbs and stuff we use. So with that all being said, you can find the record on all of the streaming platforms. I'll make sure that there's links to that in the description if you are interested in hearing all those guitar tones or these tones that I've created inside of the Quad Cortex being utilized in a similar manner. So let's go ahead and head into Cortex Control, and I'll just start walking you through it. All right, so now that we're into the computer, previously with Quad Cortex, if I want to do a video like this, I'd have to set up a separate camera to face the screen of the Quad Cortex, and then I'd have to set up a separate camera to talk into, separate mic situation. I'm sure there's a way to do it directly out of the Quad Cortex, but then again, 2 cameras, it's a whole thing. So now, thanks to Cortex Control, which Neural released in the past few months, we have a visual representation of what's happening in the unit on the screen here, and that makes things a little easier for me to walk you through stuff. So this right here is the Quad Cortex Control, and this is my main preset for the band. So I'll kind of explain it in the most basic terms, and we'll start going through all of the sounds. So in one, as you see here, this is my guitar path. It is split at the end, and a portion of the signal goes out to a Power Stage 170, which is a power amp that Seymour Duncan makes, into a real cab. I also have the other end of it going to IRs that go to my in-ear system, as well as front of house. The reason you are seeing two IRs there is because my clean amp uses a different cabinet than my dirty amp. Not necessary, but I just like the way it sounds. So anyway, that is input 1. Input 2 is my mic input. So I use the Quad Cortex for vocal effects. And it just helps. It keeps everything kind of in one spot. I can send 2 completely independent feeds to and from the Quad Cortex without any real issues. And that's ideal in this situation. So let's go ahead and take a look at the presets as well as hear them. I'll walk you through everything I have set up and kind of why I have it set up that way. So I guess before I get into anything, if you are not familiar with the Quad Cortex, A, B, C, D represents the top row of buttons on the unit. E, F, G, and H represents the bottom row. I put most of my presets in the bottom row because it's what's closest to my feet on the floor. E being my main button 1, essentially, for my presets, is the clean, and it is a combination of the US Tweed Bass Lad Bright, which is basically Quad Cortex or Neural's version of the Fender Bassman, which is one of my favorite amps of all time. It is my go-to for clean stuff. I have it combined with Simple Delay and a little bit of chorusing. So getting back to the amp, if you're not familiar with Quad Cortex, these little icons you see here that say A, B, C, and D in like 4 corners, these are the equivalent of what would be a snapshot inside of Helix. And if you're not familiar with that, essentially you can assign one button to change a variety of parameters anywhere in the preset. So I like to keep everything in one place with my presets. It was the same in Helix, unless I was using HX Stomp. But when I was using the LT and when I'm using native, I tend to build out a system that encompasses everything I would use in a live environment. So I'll create those presets and I'll create those snapshots in order to just use one thing and have every tone that I would use throughout the course of a recording or a live show. And because I use basically one and the same, it's easier just to keep it all self-contained. Hopefully that makes sense. So long and short of it is I have 5 gain stages. I have a clean, I have a slightly overdriven, I have a distortion, I have an octave with a little bit more overdrive, and then I have a lead patch. So that's 5. Technically there's a 6th, but the 6th one just combines all of those because it makes a bunch of noise, and that's fun when you're doing stuff live to make a bunch of noise. But either way, it's all down to 5 things that are go-tos depending on which song we're playing. And throughout the entirety of the record we recorded, I really only use those 5 sounds, so that's what's here. So if you see, as I guess I digress, if you see these little 4-corner A, B, C, D things, this means that this is being affected by the snapshot or the scene mode here. So one button is changing a variety of parameters. So when I'm choosing this for my clean, this is the setup I get, and here is my clean tone. So that's the clean tone, and now we're going to move into dirty territory. So for my dirty, I use a different setup, but you'll see down here this switching that turned off the bassman and turned on a different amp head, so we'll get to that. So I use the Freeman, which is basically the Freeman 100 is the BE 100, or the equivalent of the BE 100 inside of the Quad Cortex. I don't really use any snapshots here. I just have it set up the way I'd like as far as this tone. Now the BE 100, since this particular version of it or this model of it doesn't have the HBE circuit, I do use an overdrive in front of it. But these are my settings. This amp is not incredibly high gain, so which is fine. I don't use a ton of gain generally. But I have it dialed in a little bit higher in this one just to kind of get the oomph that I want and to honestly just get as close to the Jerry Cantrell sound as possible. And that is being combined here with the traditional tube screamer. You'll see here that it does have a snapshot here because between my slightly overdriven tone and my dirty tone, I change some of the output stuff here or the overdrive level in order to affect the tone. So this is my basic dirty tone. It's going into a different IR, which is an Own Hammer low-tuned all-purpose, I believe. But anyway, here is that tone. Dirty. All right, so that's that. Let's get into my slightly overdriven clean tone, which is in a different spot there. So that is this. As you can see, because of the snapshot feature, more overdrive is added here. But this utilizes a reverb and a delay, and then going into the clean amp, and then into the IR that would be associated with the dirty amp. And it just does a thing. So it's just a bit bloomy and full of reverb and delay, but it's also slightly overdriven, not fully dirty. It's kind of one of my go-to sounds for verses and things of the sort. It just is a nice texture, and that's kind of my whole jam with music and guitar tone creation, is adding layers of texture to things and making the parts have identities via the tones changing along with the parts of the songs. So, yep, that is that. Nothing too crazy to mention there. It's the simple delay with a different setting than what I would use elsewhere. Spring reverb just on there to add that extra little bit of slap back there. Full on boing, if you look at here, 100% boing. And yeah, that's that. So let's make our way into my octave setting. So my octave setting is the same as my main dirty tone, except for I have an octave put in front of it. So it's got a sub octave and a little bit of the upper octave added, and that gives us this sound. So that is that tone. It's also the primary tone I used on the song Honey Creeper on the record that came out on the 2nd of February, 2024. That's right, I'm promoting in the middle of this tone creation video. Promoting. That's my record. It came out. It came out. All right. Anyway, and lastly, let's move into our lead thing. And developing a theme here, I'm trying to get things pretty close to that whole Jerry Cantrell lead tone, but also making it my own by adding in a little bit more reverb and delay so that I can do my usual speed picky drone shit, that sort of thing. It's something I've done on a lot of records, and it's kind of my go-to move, because why not? But anyway, this is the dirty setting, and I have reverb and delay added. I also have the overdrive added. It is kicked up a bit on the overdrive itself. I have the volume level a bit higher as well, just to kind of give it a little bit of added oomph. So that's that, but here is this if you would like to check it out. That's the lead tone. Nothing too special or unusual. And then we'll go to my chaos thing, which is just everything pretty much. But in a live setting, at a higher volume, especially with having a cabinet on stage, I can get some feedback with that, and I can really just kind of get wild with it and make a bunch of noise. And that's the whole idea, ultimately. But yeah, the long and short of it is this is my Quad Cortex preset that I use for the band. I do have a few versions of this exact preset that have different amps in them, because in certain rooms, certain amps sound better than others. So they're literally the mirror image of this, just with, say, a Bogner amp or a standard Marshall rather than the Friedman. What I've found is that the Ubershaw, which is my favorite Bogner amp, and my favorite one is in the modelers as well, it is fairly gain heavy on its own. I can't really get it past 3 without it really already kind of being there. It's a different type of gain. It's a little more aggressive. So in certain instances, in certain environments, for whatever reason, that tone works quite well. I use it on recordings a lot, and I split them left and right. But there are other situations in which sometimes it just sounds better to use something that's less gainy, which is why I would go with the Marshall. So I have a JCM 800 version of the same preset. And then more often than not, I find myself gravitating towards the Friedman just because it's my favorite sound. It's what I use the most in Helix. It's, you know, just sounds the best to me. And it's kind of a nice happy medium between the high gain world of the Ubershaw and the lesser high gain world of the Marshall. It's a nice happy medium because it is a little more gainy, but it still retains a lot of that mid-range stuff that I love about Marshall amps so much. And it just gets you where you want with your tone. I guess before I sign off here, just reiterating that everything you've heard today is the IR choices in conjunction with this. So you have heard today what would go to front of house or my in-ear mix. So if these tones sound good to you, then they're going to sound good out in front of the stage, running through mains and such. Sounding big and sounding great, I hope. But yeah, this is my first video kind of showing off how I use the Quad Cortex. If you have any more questions about it, or if you have any questions, no one's asked me a question other than one person on Instagram, which is what led me to make this video. But this is the preset. If you have questions about the preset, if you need help with Quad Cortex, or you'd like to see more content of this kind, please let me know, and I'd be happy to make more videos for you. So, yeah, it's been a while since I've done one of these. I'm excited to get back into it. It's been me. It's been you. This is Gear Stuff and Things. Modern Witchcraft put out a record on the 2nd. I really hope that you like it. All right, bye.